Well, good morning, good morning, good morning. It's really delightful to see you. Okay, we have a wonderful opportunity today, and I thank the heads of school and the heads of house for helping us to have this time together, because we have some very special guests with us who have travelled quite a way this morning and over the last week to be able to join us here. And as you can see from the PowerPoint title, they're going to be talking about resilience, well-being and success. And I know a lot of you felt that yesterday. It was a great day out at Griffith on the athletics track. So our guests bring with them a wide range of personal and professional perspectives about how to look after your well-being, how you can become more resilient and achieve success, not just at school, but in your life in general. Both of our guests live and work in the UK, though one of them is Italian and German and grew up in Luxembourg. Has anyone been to Luxembourg before? Yeah, for a few of you. Whereas the other feels right at home here as an Australian. In fact, she swam and won medals in 2 Paralympic Games for Australia. But I'll let her tell you more about her story. Both of our guest speakers have amazing stories to tell, and I'm looking forward to an uplifting and lively presentation. I hope our stage suggests that. So without further ado, I'd like you to give a warm St Hilda's welcome to Frederika Roberts and Elizabeth Wright.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us here today, girls. As I'm sure you can tell by the accent, I'm the Aussie one. And I'm really glad to be home and having a visit in what I think is the best country in the world, even though I've been to many countries all over the world. I'm sure Fred will disagree with me. Again, thank you so much for having us here today. I want to start off our talk today by telling you a little bit of a story about my Paralympic experience. I'm actually going to talk about one of my races from the Sydney 2000 Paralympic Games. And the race that I'm going to tell you about is the 4x50 freestyle relay. This particular race, on paper, my team, Australia, we were the fastest. In fact, we were so fast, we were going to smash the world record by 30 seconds and beat everyone else by at least a lap. And as I'm sure you guys know and understand and certainly feel, as Australians, we think we're pretty much the best at every single sport in the entire world, right? So I'm sure you can imagine that as we walked out onto pool deck, we were very sure and very confident of ourselves. So much so that we turned to our 2 main rivals, Team USA on this side and Team GB on this side, and we told them that they should just go home because we had this in the bag. But were they going to go home? Of course not. They were 2 of the best teams in the world, and they were there to win this race just as much as we were. I remember as the race started down the other end, I quickly got my cap and goggles on and leapt up onto the diving block. I was the second swimmer in the relay team. And I took up my war cry, and I'm really sorry if this is really loud, but this is the way I tell this story, so I'm going to illustrate to you what my war cry was. Go, Denise, go! And Denise was flying down the pool towards me. But halfway through Denise's lap, I realised we had a little bit of a problem. Team USA had pulled ahead and Team GB were right on her shoulder. I knew that I was going to have to make up time, which was fine. When I looked at the 2 swimmers I'd be up against, I knew that I could beat them. I knew that I could get ahead of them. As Denise approached the end of her lap, I got set, and as soon as she touched the yellow touchpad, I took off over the top of her and just absolutely motored it down my lap of the race. So much so that halfway through my lap, I managed to catch Team USA and edge slightly ahead. But Team GB, no matter what I did, I couldn't shake them. It was going to be a very tight race, much tighter than we thought it would be. But I managed to finish my lap just slightly ahead of Team USA and Team GB, giving our 3rd swimmer the tiniest head start. As soon as I was able to, I got out of the pool and up onto the diving block again and took up my war cry again. Go, Melissa, go! And she was flying down the pool towards our last swimmer. But halfway through Melissa's lap, I realised we had a problem yet again. Team USA had caught her and edged slightly ahead, and Team GB was still right there on her shoulder. It was going to come down to our very last lap. And if anyone could win this race for us, it would be our last swimmer, Carney. As they changed over down the other end, my war cry changed again, and as I'm sure you can guess, it went something like this. Go, Carney, go! And Carney was flying down the pool towards me. But 15 metres out towards the end of the race, I couldn't bear to watch anymore. It was a dead heat between Team USA, Australia, and Team GB. I didn't know who was going to win, so I turned to watch the results up on the scoreboard instead. It was too agonising to watch. And eventually the results popped up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I started to smile. Team USA came second. A team we hadn't expected to beat us, way out in lane 1, Team Japan came first. But the question was, did we manage to just beat Team GB for that bronze medal? And I'm pleased to say that we did. We just managed to beat them to get third place. I'm as proud of that bronze medal as if it is gold, and I'll tell you why. It's all about team. As a relay team, we all swam personal best times in each of our laps. All of our starts, finishes and changeovers were perfect. We practiced together until we got it 100% right. And that day we did actually break the world record. It just so happened that 2 other teams happened to break the world record as well. So it was close, it was tight, but as a team, we did the best that we could in that moment to bring the success that we got that day, because it was an absolute success. But team is the most important thing to come out of that experience, because to have success in life, to achieve the goals that you want to achieve, you have to have team and support around you. You'll see this photo up here. This is of the 1996 Atlanta Paralympic Games swimming team. And I am in there somewhere. I'm sure you can spy me up there in that photo. For me, team isn't just the relay team and those few people, but it's that wider team as well. Even if we were competing against each other or not against each other, it was about the support we could give each other. But it went even bigger than that. Team went to the entire Australian Paralympic team. It went to the whole country, all of Australia supporting us. And then even narrowing it down again to the family members and friends who supported me and were part of my team. And when you have that support, you suddenly start to believe that you can achieve so much more than you think you're capable of. We're not islands. We need each other to help lift each other up on our shoulders and do the best that we can. Being a part of this team, part of building those bonds and those positive relationships that were needed for success, involved actually doing a lot of teamwork activities and team bonding activities. And I'm going to take you through an activity today. As a team, we were constantly doing activities like this. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to stand up. And if you can, I know there's a lot of you here, but if you can, pair up with the person next to you. If you find that you don't have a pair, maybe ask one of the teachers to pair up with you. Okay, hopefully you've all managed to get a pair. And I'm going to ask Fred to come up and demonstrate this activity with me. This activity is called 1, 2, 3. I actually came across this activity at a positive psychology convention 2 years ago. 2 years ago, yeah. Was it that one?
It was.
Yeah, it was.
In Canada, yeah.
And it's done by 2 women who run an organisation called improv.com. And they really work around building team and building bonds within people, whether it be in schools or organisations or companies or businesses. And this activity, 1, 2, 3, is quite simple, but it's gradually going to get harder and harder and harder as we go along. Now, when I show you the activity with Fred, you'll then have a go at doing the activity. But please, when I call out stop, please stop the activity that you're doing because we'll have to move on to the next step just to keep the time going. We're very aware of time and we've got so much to talk to you about. So this is how you start this particular activity. So you face each other and it's as simple as this. All you have to do is go 1,
2,
3.
1,
2,
3,
1,
2,
3. Do you understand? Okay, off you go. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, everyone stop. Hands up who found that easy. Hands up who found that a bit hard. A few, well, okay. I'm going to challenge you guys a little bit more now. This time, instead of saying the number 1, you are going to click your fingers instead. Okay? So this is how it will look. Fred and I will demonstrate for you to begin with.
2,
3, 2,
3, 2,
3. Oh, 2, 3. See, even I mess up, even though I've been doing this for a few years now. But you get the idea. Off you go.
1, 2, 3, go. I don't want this to go. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 1. No, you don't.
Okay, everyone. Okay, hands up who found that easy. Who found that a bit harder? We're getting more towards the hard side. Okay, I'm going to take you through just one more level of this challenge and then we'll move on with Fred's story. But the next level of the challenge is, so for number 1, we were clicking our fingers instead. We're still going to do that. But for number 2, you're going to clap your hands. So Fred and I will show you again. So 3,
3,
3.
3.
Okay, understand? Off you go. Okay, well done, girls. You can sit back down. But just a quick question again, who found that easy? We're getting less and less on the easy side. Who found that really hard? It does. There is another layer to that activity, but don't worry, I won't torture you all with that. But one last thing I want to say about teamwork is that teamwork and being a team member is actually considered a character strength as well. But I'm not going to talk to you about character. I'm going to hand you over to Fred, and she's going to talk about character to you and tell you a little bit of a story.
Thank you very much, Liz. Yes, teamwork is a character strength. And the thing is, we all have character strengths. We all have things that make us who we are. And notice I talk about make us who we are, not make us good at something. It's about really the character strengths is the things that make you the kind of person you are. And there's been some fascinating research done by an organisation called the VIA Institute. They've been doing global research for, I think, about 20 years now into character strengths. And what they found is that all of us, regardless where we're born, how old we are, what gender we are, what cultural background we're from, what religion we are, any of that doesn't matter. We all have these 24 strengths. Now, you might look at that and think, oh, but I'm not very creative. Or, I'm not very brave. I'm not a leader. But we all have all of those strengths in different degrees. The difference, of course, is that we're all individuals, so we all have them in different measures, and we'll all have top strengths, what the VIA calls signature strengths, that are different to other people. So if you don't feel like leadership is your strength, it might just be that it's further down the bottom, but it's there, which means that if you want to, you can work on it and develop it. But what's really interesting is as well, if you become aware of what your top strengths are, because you can use those. Research has shown that if you choose one of your top 5 strengths, and you can probably look at those and start thinking about which ones you recognize the most in yourself. If you look at one of your top 5 strengths and find just 7 new ways of using it, and then use those 7 ways over 7 days, so one new way of using a strength each day for a week. The research shows that it can improve happiness, and even in the case of people who are clinically depressed, reduce depression for up to 6 months. That's not bad, is it? For a 7-day, fairly simple activity, 6 months of feeling happier. So working on your strengths is really powerful, and to do that, you need to be aware of what they are, what your strongest ones are, and how you can work on them. And it's also really useful to be aware of other people's strengths around you, because that makes you a better team member. It also means that you have better friendships, better relationships with your teachers, with your parents, etc., if you're aware of your strengths and their strengths. So I'm going to tell you a story to illustrate how my youngest daughter uses her strengths and has used them to great effect. So my youngest daughter, Hannah, at the age of 12, made an announcement. She said to me and my husband, "Mama, Daddy, I'm going to be a pediatric cardiothoracic surgeon when I grow up." Now, if you are 12, and I know some of you in this room probably are, you would be forgiven for not knowing what a pediatric cardiothoracic surgeon is, because most 12-year-olds don't. If you do know and you're 12 years old, put your hand up just to see. Oh, we've got one at the back. Well done, I'm impressed. For everybody else, a pediatric cardiothoracic surgeon is a surgeon that operates on children and babies and operates on their hearts and lungs. And the reason Hannah knew what one of those was is because one of those operated on her when she was just 10 months old. And she was waiting to have another big open heart operation at some point in the very near future. We didn't know when at that point. And she'd spent an awful lot of time in and out of hospital being looked at by cardiologists and having various, sometimes emergency, sometimes planned procedures under general anesthetic. So she was very familiar with the environment, and she decided, this is what I want to do when I grow up. I want to operate on children and babies that have gone through similar things as me. This meant that Team Roberts, our family, had to really come together and support her. And her school team had to really come together to kind of look at what do you need to do to get there. And it came down to then subject choices and really working hard. So she made her subject choices for what we have in the UK, the GCSE exams, which take place at 16. And then she got the call, "We want you to come in for your operation." So there came another choice. At the age of 14, she had a very mature conversation with her surgeons and said, "Can you operate on me in the summer holidays? Because I don't want to miss any time off school. I'm coming up to the 2 most important years before my GCSE exams. I can't miss any time." So they did. They managed to operate on her that summer. So she spent her entire summer in hospital, pretty much. And she managed to just miss 3 days at the start of the new term in the autumn. So imagine my shock when this girl who was so driven, so determined, so ambitious, and had always been the dream pupil. You know, teachers used to tell me, she's so amazing, she's so lovely to teach. She wasn't always that lovely at home, I must say. I used to say, are you sure? Are you sure that's my daughter? But at school, she was amazing. Suddenly, I was getting phone calls from school saying, your daughter's not interested. She's crossing her arms. She's physically turning her backs to the teachers, particularly her physics teacher, that poor woman. She said, I hate physics, I don't get it, I don't want to do it. That physics teacher tried everything. I'm glad to say that with a lot of teamwork, a lot of support, and Hannah putting in those strengths, really working on her self-regulation, working on her determination, working on her hope, because a lot of what was happening there was fear. Suddenly it became important and she was scared. She worked on all of these strengths and she did get the grades she needed for the next stage of her education. In fact, physics, which she hated and still hates to this day, she got the best mark that you can get in GCSEs in the UK. She got an A star. So she was proud of that, put it behind her, thanked her physics teacher. And then she had to make another choice, where to do her A-levels, so the exams that you do at 18. She could have stayed in the school she was at, but she decided that she wanted to move to a different school, which meant that she would be better positioned to get the support she needed from the team around the school, because they were used to having lots of girls going to do medicine from that school. This meant a 2-hour commute at the beginning and end of each day. Bus, train, bus. She left the house just after 6 o'clock every morning. She got back quite often at about 6:30 at night. And then, of course, there was all the schoolwork. But on top of that, in the UK, certainly universities, when you apply for medicine, they expect lots more. They expect you to have a life outside of studies, which is good, because you need that for your well-being. So she carried on doing choir, which meant lots of rehearsals and multiple performances throughout the year, often travelling up and down the country for it. She carried on doing performing arts, which meant 3 shows a year, as well as so musical theatre, doing performing shows 3 times a year, as well as rehearsals, of course, every weekend. And then they also want you to show that you can care about people, which makes sense, right, if you're going to be a doctor. So she did some volunteering every weekend, first in a children's hospice and then in an old people's home. So that took a lot of her time, but that commitment was there. So again, those strengths coming through of determination, of self-regulation, managing her time to make it all happen so that she could actually get to where she wanted to get to. And I'm very glad to say that when her exam results came out, she was very pleased. She looks happy, right? She actually didn't just get the grades she needed for her chosen first choice university. She got better than she needed. So off she was to Manchester University in the north of England. And there she is the day we moved her in, looking very happy outside her university. And then in her halls of residence, looking a little bit less happy because her big sister was mothering her, as they tend to do. So anybody who has siblings, I'm sure you can identify, whether they're older or younger, they can be quite irritating. And so Charlie had been at uni for 2 years at that point, and she was all big sister. Oh, you're going to uni, my sister. Sister is what she used to call her when they were little, so it stuck. But as happy as that was, it wasn't plain sailing from that point onwards, because adjusting to moving away from home, to a completely different way of learning, to making new friends. And again, this sudden pressure of, oh my goodness, I'm actually here. In 5 years' time, if all goes well, I'm going to be a doctor. The pressure really got to her, and she struggled that first term. But at that point, she'd done so much work on her strengths, so she knew to ask for help. She knew that she needed to get a team around her. And so she got some great support from the university, who actually put her on a mindfulness course, and we'll do a little mindfulness activity with you at the very end of this session today, just to give you a flavour of what you can do and how helpful it can be. And she talked to us, and she kept us close to make sure that we could support her as a team as well. And she stayed hopeful. And within a few months, she'd made some great friends. She's now looking forward to going back for a second year and moving into a house with all of her friends, and she's having a great time. So all those strengths are really useful, and here they are again. If you look at those, she used curiosity, because she was curious about going to university and what was coming next. Love of learning, it's one of the things, when it gets hard, it's really useful to tap into your love of learning. Gratitude for the support. Perspective, when things get tough, putting that into perspective of her entire life. So all of these things, when you think about your lives, and if you think about times when things maybe get a little bit difficult, a little bit challenging, or even a lot challenging, think about what strengths you have and really work on those and tap into those strengths, because it will really help you. And so with that, I'll hand over to Liz for the next part of our presentation.
Okay, I'm going to ask you all to stand again, please. Okay, can we all sit back down again? You sound so disappointed. It's all right, I'm going to make you stand again. Up you go. And then sit back down again. And then stand back up. And then sit back down. Do you all realise what you're doing right now? Squats? You're doing some squats. All I'm doing is getting you to do some squats. And the reason that I did that was just to shake things up a little bit for you. You've had to sit here for about 20 minutes and listen to us talk to you, just to get you moving a little bit, but also just to illustrate to you that just fitting a little bit of physical movement into your day is so easy. So whether you're studying for an exam, or you're in the classroom, or you've been sitting outside for a long time, it's so easy just to get up and move. And when we get up and move, our bodies, we're not just benefiting our physical health, but also benefiting our mental health. So if you're feeling a bit stressed or a bit anxious, it's always good to get a little bit of movement into your day-to-day life, whether it be something as simple as squats or actually going outside for a walk or something like that. It's so simple to do. But now that I've had you moving a little bit, I'm going to move on to another story to tell you about my Paralympic experience. Now, I was 13 years old when I set myself the goal to swim at the Sydney 2000 Paralympic Games. So about the age, just a fraction older than some of the youngest of you in this hall. And pretty much my whole Paralympic journey was through all the ages that I'm seeing here today. All of those years that was spent training and in hard work and focus and determination, all those character strengths that Fred was just talking about. Doesn't mean that there weren't ups and downs, because that is life. There's always going to be ups and downs. One of the worst downs was actually at the start of my journey when, in my very first big race, at my very first big competition, I actually was so nervous I swam the wrong stroke in the race and was disqualified. And I almost gave up. I almost walked away from the sport then and there. But I decided to stick with it because my dream to swim at the Sydney Games was more important to me than anything else. And that really came to fruition when at the Sydney Games, my second race at the Games was the 400-metre freestyle. And this was a race that I was ranked 15th in the world in, so I didn't even expect to make the final. But for 6 months, my coach had been telling me, Elizabeth, I think you can win a medal in this race. So I did everything my coach asked me of. It was that tapping into teamwork again and that support that you get. And I worked really hard on this race, even though I turned up at the Games and I was still ranked 15th in the world, and I didn't think I would even make the final. So I showed up for the morning heats of the 400-metre freestyle at the 2000 Paralympic Games, and I was promptly sent home, or back to the athletes' village. But for a good reason. Enough people had pulled out of the race that we were going straight to final that night. So my first big obstacle was overcome, and I didn't even have to lift a finger for it. So I went back to the athletes' village and I rested and I looked after myself, and I spoke to my coach a number of times, and we spoke about my race plan for that night. And we spoke about the attitude that I was going to take into that race, because I was still ranked 15th in the world in this race at that time. But with my race plan, I walked out onto pool deck feeling much more confident than I ever dreamed I would be for this race. And I had my attitude set. It was a can-do attitude, a self-belief that I could perhaps win a medal in this race. And as the race started, I dove in for this 400-metre freestyle final at the Sydney Games, and I took it easy. The rest of the swimmers went off as fast as they could. They sprinted that first 200 metres, but part of my race plan was to let them do that. What my coach knew was that I was a middle distance swimmer, that I had the stamina to back up this race. And when he'd watched my competitors compete and swim, he knew that they were sprinters, that they would take this race out really hard and perhaps really tire at the end. So we were going to try and do the opposite. So I hung back for the first 200 metres of this race that I was ranked 15th in the world in, and I got to the 200-metre point and I thought, right, this is it. This is where either I own this race and I actually win a medal, or it all goes pear-shaped and wrong. So I put my foot to the floor, I increased my stroke rate and kick rate, and I took off as fast as I could after all the other swimmers. And as I did each tumble turn, and as I did each lap, I started to realise that I was overtaking the other swimmers. So much so that it got to my very last tumble turn, my very last lap, and I realised that I was in a medal position. I just wasn't sure what medal it was going to be. And I was so tired by this point. I wanted to stop. My arms and legs were screaming for me to stop. But I only had one more lap, and I was going to give everything that I had to this last lap. I remember seeing the yellow touchpad and stretching with everything that I had to reach it. And as soon as I stopped, I turned and looked to the left, and there was no one there. I turned and looked to the right, and there was Steph from the US. And I realised what had happened. I quickly turned around to look at the scoreboard, and there was the number 2 next to my name. In a race I was ranked 15th in the world in, I walked away with the silver medal. Thank you. I'll very quickly show you. I know I've got the photo, but I have the medal here as well. And maybe if we've got some time afterwards, you might be able to come and have a closer look. But there is that silver medal. And what this medal reminds me of every day is to believe in myself and to think about the attitude that I have, that I take into everything that I do. To actually show up and give 100% in that moment. To tap into those character strengths and really use them every single day of my life, just as I did in that race. But what I want to talk to you about off the back of this is, how did I get that attitude? How did I get that outlook? How did I build the right character strengths to actually turn up on that day and achieve what I did? And it was all about role models. And role models are such a key element of character education. Quite often we look at people as role models and we look at their successes that they've had. We look at the fame or the fortune that they've achieved and we think, wow, that is my role model, that is what I want to achieve. But when I talk about role models, I talk about character role models. And when you talk about character role models, you're talking about emulation. It's not about looking at someone and going, I want to be exactly like them. It's about looking at that person and going, what are your best character traits and how do you express them? And how can I bring them into my own life? When I think about character role models, I think about at the beginning of my swimming career and who I really looked up to and who really taught me about the type of swimmer and type of person that I wanted to be. And that was actually one of my fellow swimmers who'd been in the game a lot longer than I had. And her name is Priya Cooper. And for her, she really gave me that kind of format on how I was going to be as a swimmer. So I'm going to tell you about an activity that you can do tonight or over the weekend that is about discovering your character role models and how you can keep that in your mind, fresh in your mind. It's a very simple activity. It wouldn't take you long to do. But you can be as creative with it as you possibly can. All I ask you to do is to think of someone in your life who could be your character role model. Now, a role model could be anyone from your family. It could be someone in your peer group. It could be a friend. It could be someone from your local community. It could be someone in your year group or in your school. It could be someone famous if they're showing character traits that you want to emulate. It could be a historical figure. It could be a fictional character. It can be anyone you want, but what you're focusing in on is their character traits. And once you've decided on who's going to be your role model, just as I decided that Priya Cooper was going to be my role model when I was 13, you then think about which top 3 character traits they have that you want to emulate. And you can go back to the VIA character strengths that Fred showed you, or you can even move beyond that and think about other character traits that aren't mentioned in the VIA. And then I'll show you my example of Priya. And then you can take an image of your role model and you just put on, in some way, however you want, be as creative as possible, the 3 character traits that you see in them. Now, for me with Priya, I saw leadership, kindness, and humility. For me, leadership with Priya was all about the fact that she was one of the oldest on the team and she was actually the team captain. And she had to lead us through all those kinds of teamwork activities and support us and make sure that we were okay. In terms of kindness, she was a role model for me because of the way she took all us new swimmers under her wing. A lot of us were quite young when we first started travelling in our sport. I was 15 when I first went overseas for swimming. And Priya made sure that we weren't feeling homesick, that we were okay, that we felt supported, that we were making friends. But for me, I think humility was the most important thing that she taught me because Priya was an amazing Paralympic swimmer. She won countless gold medals, broke countless world records, but she never showed off about it. She was proud of her achievements, but she was there to support everyone else just as much as we were supporting her. Just because she'd had all this achievement didn't necessarily make her super special. It just meant that she could become a real role model for all of us on how to approach our swimming and how to be the best swimmer that we could be. So that's all I'm asking you to do either tonight or tomorrow, is to think about a character role model for yourself and apply the character traits to that role model. And have that image somewhere where you can see it every day, where you can remind yourself every day that that is the type of person that I want to be, and that is the type of person that I'm going to work hard every day to emulate. So, for me, another aspect of Priya, of her personality, is that big smile that she has on her face. Priya was or still is one of the most positive and happy people that I know, that I've ever known. But I'm not going to talk to you about positivity and happiness. I'm going to hand over to Fred to talk to you a little bit about that.
Thank you. And it will be a very little bit because we want to fit in another activity or two just before we send you off today. But yes, I'm sure you'll have felt, as Liz was talking about her story and about winning those medals, the positive emotions, even just reliving that moment, are really strong. And I've heard this story so many times, and I still get goosebumps when she tells a story about that silver medal in particular. So it really is important to absolutely tap into the things that make you feel good, and also to remember those. And when I talk about positive emotions, I don't mean that some emotions are good and some are bad. All emotions are valid and valuable. If you feel angry, upset, hurt, etc., it's absolutely okay to feel like that. But if you're aware of which emotions make you feel good, you can deliberately do things to do more of those things that make you feel good, to bring more of those positive emotions. And so I mentioned Hannah had open heart surgery when she was just 10 months old, and this was her in hospital. And, you know, it was horrible. She nearly didn't survive the surgery. It took her about 4 weeks, and it was very touch and go. But there were moments where we couldn't stop laughing through that time, and we really tapped into that. They strapped her arms up, you can't see it there, with foam pads so that she wouldn't pull out all her drips. And what they'd inadvertently done is taken a baby who just had a lot of anaesthetic, and we can sometimes get a little bit feisty when we've had a lot of anaesthetic, and they'd weaponized her arms. So every time a doctor or nurse came near her, she would wallop them with these arms, and I'm walloping, I did say I move around a lot. She would wallop them, and luckily the nurses and doctors had a sense of humour as well. I think they'd seen it all before. And then when she was a little bit older, 14 years old after her second surgery, there was this real moment of frustration where she was trying to tell me something, and she tried, and then we realised that the reason I couldn't understand her is she had a breathing tube in her mouth, so she couldn't speak, she couldn't produce sound, so she was gesticulating. I remembered that we had neighbours that were deaf, and they'd taught her a bit of sign language, but they hadn't taught me. And none of the doctors or nurses knew what she was saying either. But then she mouthed what she was trying to say, and maybe, especially those of you who are closer, might be able to work it out. And she went, anyone?
I want to home.
Yeah, almost. I want to
go home.
No.
I want a hug.
Yes, she wanted a hug. So she wanted to tap into that positive emotion of love and that character strength of love. She needed that closeness. So I hugged her and I cried a lot. And then she said something that needed no interpretation. She went, I know. Every time I think about it, it just starts me off again. But, you know, she's 19 and she still does that. And we do the whole, I love you more, no, I love you more. And she said, at some point I'm going to have to stop, you know. And I went, oh, you can still do it when you're a doctor. It's fine. You can just do it in private. So we've had lots of moments of tapping into those positive emotions, and far more than I can talk you through right now. When Charlie was 12, my eldest daughter, because she was also born with complex and severe heart conditions, she had a cardiac arrest. And in the hospital, they made sure that she was looked after. Look, she's smiling. She just had an 8-day coma, but she's there smiling. And they'd made sure that they snuck her sister in. They had all these restrictions at the time due to infection control, but they snuck her sister in the back way to the ward into a family room because Hannah had nearly seen her sister die, and Hannah was 10 years old, and she needed the reassurance of seeing Charlie well, even though she was still locked away in the hospital, effectively. So they had time to gossip about school and everything that was happening, and that was absolutely absolutely lovely. So we can tap into our positive emotions at any time, even when things are really tough. And when Hannah had her second surgery, I laughed every single day, and I wrote a blog, and I put every funny thing into that blog. So that not just we could tap into the positive emotions, but all our friends and family that were keeping up with what was happening every day through my blog could do that too. But now what I'm going to do is take you through a couple of ways to tap into your positive emotions. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make you laugh. And I'm not a comedian, so I'm not going to tell you jokes, but you will laugh. Most of you, at least, I'm sure, will laugh. It's going to get quite noisy, so I'm going to teach you a way to bring an activity to the end. And when I do this, I'll need you to bring it to the end really quickly so that we have time to do the rest, okay? But the first thing I'm going to need you to do is stand up. And we're going to do a very quick warm-up. Now, this activity that we're going to be doing is called laughter yoga, okay? So it's laughter. Look, laughing already, it's brilliant. And the thing is, it's fake, but that's great because, especially with this many people in the room, it will turn real. It generally does, okay? So just go with it. And with this little warm-up, pretend you're having fun already. Big smiles, all right? And just do what I'm doing. I'm just going to do this 3 times. So you go, ho, ho, ha, ha, ha. Ho, ho, ha, ha, ha. One more. Ho, ho, ha, ha, ha. Now, that was easy, right? So I'm going to do an exercise with you now, and when you see or hear me or the people next to you going ho, ho, ha, 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 as it ripples through the room, join in. As soon as we're all doing it, we stop and we do the next one, okay? So I'm going to come down for this first bit. You're scared now, aren't you? I'm going to pick on someone. Okay, I'm going to come over here, and what I'm going to do, and for those of you who can't see me because I'm now down here, I'm going to shake hands, and you're going to do that with the people around you, as many as you can in the time we have. I'm going to shake hands, and as soon as you do, you're going to smile the biggest smile you can, and you're just going to start laughing. So you're just going to go, off you go with each other. Ho, ho, ha, ha, ha. Ho, ho, ha, ha, ha. Ho, ho, ha, ha, ha. You are brilliant. You're absolutely brilliant. Right, one more. We could keep going like this for ages, but we've got time for one more laughter exercise. Okay, I'll demonstrate this from the top so you can all see me. Join in as I'm doing it. So hopefully most of you or all of you regularly floss your teeth, yeah, to keep your teeth nice and healthy and your gums healthy. So you'll know what I mean when I talk about flossing, not the dance. And we're going to floss our minds. We're going to get rid of anything we've accumulated that shouldn't be in there during the week. It's Friday. We're going to clear our minds for the weekend, okay? Make sure that you can have a really nice, restful weekend. So you take a piece of floss, wrap it around one finger, start pushing it in through one ear. Very carefully pull it out the other side. There's precious brains in there. Look after them. Wrap it round. And then you're just going to laugh as you floss. That's exactly it, yeah. And look at each other as you do it. Turn to your neighbours. They're doing it back there. Ho, ho, ha, ha, ha. Ho, ho, ha, ha, ha. Ho, ho, ha, ha, ha. Well done. Now we've got one more activity, but you can sit down for that one. Thank you so much. Now, I love it. Whenever I do laughter yoga, people keep giggling afterwards, which means the activity worked. It's brilliant. Those positive emotions are strong. Now, when you've had a really good belly laugh, sometimes you feel like you need to catch your breath. And I know we've only done a tiny bit today, but I'm going to show you a breathing exercise. And I mentioned very early on, remember, that my daughter Hannah was shown some mindfulness activities. And one of them is how to breathe. And it made me laugh because when she told me, I said, what have they been teaching you? She went, oh, yeah, that thing you've been telling me about for years. And I went, oh, yeah, I know what I'm talking about. But, you know, somebody else needs to tell you sometimes. But breathing is something, although we do it all the time without thinking about it, properly breathing and filling our lungs, we don't do enough of that. And it's so powerful. If you're feeling angry and you need to calm yourself down, or say you're going into an exam or a test, and you look at the paper and you have that horrible moment when your mind just goes blank, and everything you've revised is gone. Doing this activity for just a few seconds is such a brilliant way. Because what happens is when you go blank like that, or when you get really angry or frustrated and you kind of lose control a little bit of what you're doing, there's a part of your brain called the amygdala. It has one job only. It's to panic you, basically. It's there. It's one of our most primal parts of the brain. It's there to basically go, you're going to die. That's what it's there for. So when you're feeling panicked in an exam, your amygdala is saying, you're going to die. You're not going to die because you've forgotten the answer to a question in an exam, okay? I can guarantee you that. But what you do need to do is to give your brain the space to just calm down the amygdala and actually start thinking again. Because while the amygdala is there panicking, you can't remember the stuff you need to remember. And that's the same thing if you're trying to not say horrible things to your friend when you're angry. Okay, you just need to calm down the amygdala and get the thinking part of your brain engaged. So we're going to do that now, and it's a lovely way as well. If you're struggling to get to sleep at night, you can relax. It's a really nice thing to do, and you can do this anywhere, even in an exam room. So, get yourselves comfortable, but sitting up nice and straight with your bums in the backs of the chairs, both feet on the floor. And it might help if you just put one hand gently on your tummy so you can feel the rise and fall. And we'll start off, just take a nice deep breath in, and then out. Now that's not bad, but I'm seeing a few shoulders going up, okay? We're trying to fill the bottoms of our lungs, really get the air down. So I'm going to demonstrate this sideways, okay? I'm going to exaggerate so you can see. But what you're aiming for is to feel as you're breathing in, the air's going down, so it pushes everything outwards. So as you breathe in, your belly goes out. And as you breathe out, your belly goes back in. Going to turn around. So breathe in and breathe out, and your belly goes back in. Okay? So, if you're comfortable too, close your eyes. And now we're going to take 5 breaths in and out. We're going to count them. Okay, so you're going to go breathe in, 1 and 2 out. 3 in. 4 out. That's another 3 breaths in and out. And I'll let you do 2 more silently. And as you breathe out, just gently open your eyes. Talk about timing. So, instantly, I felt this calmness come across the room. And this is what you can do. If you're just sitting in an exam, just before you even look at your paper, just take a few breaths like that and calm yourselves right down. And Liz is very quickly just going to wrap up to remind us of what we've done today. And then that'll be us. So thank you very much.
Okay, just a very quick wrap up and last message for you all. Today we've spoken to you about quite a few things that are stemmed from positive psychology and character education. We've talked about teamwork, we've talked about character strengths, we've talked about role models, we've talked about positive emotions and happiness and how important they are. We've talked about physical health, the impact of just a small thing every day that can have, as well as mindfulness and mental health. We've tried to pack in as much as we could for you all, and we hope that you've enjoyed it and that you've found some tools here today that will help you on your journey, on your goal journey, on your success journey. I see so much potential ahead of me, and I know that Fred and I both feel that you all can achieve so much in every area of your life, whether it is through school or career or with your relationships and hobbies and just living a happy, well, amazing, thriving, flourishing life. So thank you very much for having us again.
Thank you.
And I'd just like to thank you, Fred and Elizabeth, for coming in today and talking to us. I really liked how you talked about the importance of teamwork and how to tap into our character strengths to achieve a positive mindset. So on behalf of all of us, I'd just like to present you with this gift, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your time in Australia.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. That's so lovely. Thank you.
Thank you.